My name is David Daniel Ball, and these are the headlines for Wednesday, the 25th of February, 2009. Executives must cut their salaries, says Rudd. Horror bushfire conditions to return on Friday. Lapthorns banned from Croatia search. Boob job will help you find a boyfriend, say doctors. Bernanke eyes possible recovery, but not for a while. 9 news story had racist overtones. Mickey Rourke goes the grope on Jessica Alba. Alcopop tax faces scrap heap. Divorce hurting the planet, says Family First. Man shot dead at $3 million cannabis plantation. And in comments, Sydney putting cruise tourism at risk. The cruise liner industry is the fastest growing sector of tourism in New South Wales, but the government's putting that all at risk, according to Alan Jones. From Piers Akerman making sense of loss by words and pictures. Sunday's National Day of Mourning is not the end of the grieving process for those involved in the Black Saturday bushfire tragedy. The thing about grief is a need to be able to speak of it. The expression of that need is different depending upon the community. Asian communities are tightly bound with family, and discussing grief with strangers is not natural for them. That isn't generally the case for Westerners, who have a need for grief counselors who will listen. I know this because of several former workplaces which dealt with substantial grief. As for the behavior of the press in times of tragedy, it's not very different than any other times, but individual members of the press generally try to be good people and often will put themselves out to help those in need. So from Tim Blair we have, Hero Bravo. I talked my way out of a speeding ticket the other day. Not bad for someone whose driving record is basically Gitmo worthy, but I'll never compare with ticket dodging maestro Pravo Jazdi. Irish police have solved the mystery of a Polish recidivist who clocked up 50 traffic offences on different addresses and who was never caught, after one officer noticed his name meant driving license in Polish. Irish cops thought Pravo Jazdi, printed on Polish driver's license, was the holder's name. The next time you're tempted to tell a Polish or Irish joke, please recall this story and remember who wins. Warming doesn't fly. A NASA satellite intended to track global warming has crashed near Antarctica after failing to reach orbit. An inconvenient graph. Following criticism, Al Gore gives up one of his lies. Former Vice President Al Gore is pulling a dramatic slide from his ever-evolving global warming presentation. Food feud. A Greens politician has been told to stop bringing her husband to council meetings because he eats too much of the food. Waverley Council Prue Cansian was told not to bring her activist husband Chris Maltby to meetings because the ratepayer-funded catering could not sustain it. God descends to earth. Andrew Bolt. With his bumbling, it's a miracle Barack Obama hasn't fallen even further from the stratosphere. We have approval ratings for each of the last 9 elected presidents after their first month in office back to Dwight Eisenhower. We're leaving Johnson and Ford aside. There's been a healthy range from a low 55% for George W. Bush after the disputed election of 2000 to a high 76% for his father 12 years earlier. I'm using ABC polls since Reagan Gallup previously. But the average 67% and Obama's 68%, as we reported in our news poll yesterday. His initial rating then is strong, but it's also generally typical for a new guy. Garrett's playlist shrinks. Annabelle Crabb wonders how many of his old hits Peter Garrett now dares sing when Midnight Oil reforms for a bushfire benefit next month. Blair's excuse thrown overboard. Not a good start for a bunch of cheap opportunists dashing to a poll before voters realise how bad things have got under Labour. The Queensland government's top investment advisor has undermined Premier Anna Bligh's justification for an early election, saying there's no evidence of political instability has hindered business investment in the state. Until we drop, living longer, getting poorer, so no wonder. More than a third of older Australians workers now plan to work until they are at least 70 in an astonishing cultural change the Bureau of Statistics reports. Free money isn't. Never have we seen so much free money to the reckless, careless, brainless, and plain lazy. Disunity and death. Was Sunday's memorial service for the bushfire dead really a time to preach race politics? Was the state government's mistimed show at the Rod Laver Arena really the place to divide mourners into First Australians and the rest? A Liberal only a journalist could love. Gerard Henderson is not surprised that John Hewson, arguably the Liberals' least successful leader but now one of its most spiteful critics, gets such a good run in the media. Most journalists prefer Labour to the coalition. This makes Liberals critical of their own party of particular interest to the media. Malcolm Fraser is one case in point, Hewson is another. Last year, Hewson appeared 3 times in ABC One Late Line's Friday Forum, where a pro-Liberal commentator is supposed to be ranged against a pro-Labour commentator. These particular discussions resembled a tennis match where 2 players on one side of the net score points at will against an absent opponent. These days, Hewson is so beloved by sections of the media that he can even comment about economic matters without anyone asking him to explain his role in Elderslie Finance Corporation. He resigned as chairman shortly before the company collapsed, owing some $200 million. It is unlikely that any former politician who is or was associated with a failed business venture would receive such an exemption from genuine media inquiry. I guess that's a yes. Reporter Matthew Franklin puts Tony Abbott's claim to the Prime Minister. Mr. Rudd, are you a toxic bore? A toxically boring reply followed. Dead Wood spends $8 million on dead wood. I know it's a Labour shrine, but why doesn't Labour use its own money to preserve it? Meanwhile, controversy builds in Barracloughdene in central Queensland over the size and shape of the state-backed memorial to the Tree of Knowledge. Locals have nicknamed the $8 million 18-metre structure Barkey's Box and the Gallows as they grapple with the size and meaning of the monument. Spending what Obama says he'll save, a comedy routine, right? Maybe Obama's rewriting of St. Augustine's "Oh Lord, help me to be pure, but not yet." President Barack Obama pledged on Monday to dramatically slash the skyrocketing annual budget deficit as he started to dole out the record $787 billion economic stimulus package he signed last week. Surely the best way to get out of debt involves not getting deeper into it. Give Mugabe a feed? Zimbabwe's famine must be serious if a poor dictator can't even scare enough people into paying for his catering. Who will guard the police? When even the police need more protection from the crooks, West Australia sure has a problem. The state opposition has lashed out after the latest attack on Warwick Police Station, saying more should have been done to improve security at the compound after earlier incidents. What Rudd must do instead of what he is doing. In an excellent analysis, Michael Stutchbury warns that Kevin Rudd can't keep borrowing big and spending bigger, hoping to stave off a slowdown. We didn't actually write it. One of the editors hired by Mr. Eric Beecher above, campaigner for quality journalism, denies an accusation I never made, this is Andrew Bolt, that he or his staff posted vile comments on this blog in order to discredit it. What I actually said is here, and the editor's non-replies in the comments that follow. Readers tell me that the sudden attack I reported of vile comments posted by newcomers purporting to agree with me coincided with a post on one of Mr. Beecher's publications that included this exhortation. Hands up if you've ever had a comment rejected at Andrew Bolt's blog. Hands up if it was nowhere near as poisonous as a published comment who agreed with the writer. So it's time to collect the most poisonous examples of comments at the blogs of Andrew Bolt and Tim Blair. Every month I'll kick off a comment thread where you can cut and paste the poisonous comments you find. Try to include a link where possible. Remember that we're looking for poisonous comments from commenters who agree and disagree with Bolt and Blair. We can't be surprised, I guess, if some people, frustrated by the lack of poisonous material on this blog, decided to supply the evidence that they were convinced should be there. Not that I hold Mr. Eric Beecher or his quality staff personally responsible, of course, any more than I'd blame a dog for its fleas. Resisting the Chinese raid. Paul Monk says China's grab for some of the most important mining resources should be blocked by the Rudd government. And the reasons are listed at the link.